All right, in this video, I want to talk about the click grip or clave grip. Essentially, the idea is you use a certain type of grip to pull a certain kind of sound out of your cymbal. So a lot of jazz drummers really love getting a woody stick click sound out of their cymbals, kind of like a knocking sound or like a little bit of a snappy kind of sound. And that sound is highly desirable to a lot of jazz drummers. I think part of it is because when you have that kind of sound, it really does sit in a nice sonic space within a jazz context. So it will be clear and it will help you kind of link up with the bass player. And oftentimes if the bass player is playing an upright bass, there's a certain tonality that that instrument has, that a woody stick sound from the cymbal really does mesh well with that sound of an upright bass. And so drummers really desire cymbals that sound that way. And the cymbal plays a huge role in it, but also, as you just heard, the way I hold my stick can be huge in drawing out that kind of sound. To me, when I think about this kind of grip, and one of the drummers that really gets this sound in an amazing way, I think of Bill Stewart and how he always seems to get that like clicky kind of knocking sound out of his ride when he's playing. And he doesn't do the grip like you just saw me do it. He has his own way of pulling that sound out of the cymbal. But I want to talk a little bit about the specifics of how you draw that sound out. A lot of it has to do with the cymbal you got, a lot of it has to do with the stick you're using, and then lastly you have the actual technique. So we'll start with the technique. So typically what you'll do when you're playing the cymbals, you play a combination of German grip and French grip. So French is when the thumb is on top, German is when your wrist is on top. And that's the typical way of playing snare drum. But when you go over to the ride cymbal, sometimes there's kind of a hybrid where you're not totally thumb on top, you're not totally wrist on top, you're kind of in the middle somewhere. You have your fulcrum with these points here, and then you have your fingers to help move the stick, and then you use the bounce of the surface, and you can manipulate the bounce to get faster patterns. This dives into the molar technique, it dives into all other kinds of techniques. But essentially, you throw the stick, and if I don't catch the stick, it just pushes my hands out. But what I'll do is I'll catch the stick, and it'll keep it there, and it gives me the ability to close my hand and get another strike. So with that, you have the foundation of being able to play the jazz ride pattern. So it's like a throwing and then a gathering of the stick, and you have this motion going on. That's obviously exaggerated, but... And then you get tighter with it, and the muscle movements get smaller. And that's a way of playing the ride cymbal that keeps you loose. It keeps very little tension in your hand. I'm not stiffening my hands at all. When I'm playing like this, if you were to come up and grab the stick, it just would come right out of my hands super easily. So I'm not gripping the stick very tight. Typical way of playing. So now we want to talk about the click grip. How do we draw more of that knocking, snappy kind of sound out of the articulation? So the idea is we are taking our fulcrum, and instead of having the thumb be kind of on top and maybe the tip of the thumb driving into the stick, what we're going to do is kind of lay the thumb across it here, which is going to give us the ability to wrap our fingers around and create this open cavity in our hand. So that's what's super important. If you've ever played a clave, what you'll know is that you take your hand and you hold the stick extremely loosely, and you're creating this air cavity here which acts as a resonating chamber, and then that gives you the clave sound when you play the clave with the other one in your right hand. So you get a more open sound there, but if I gripped it, it's tighter. So you want this open resonant sound. So that's the idea. We're taking Clave technique and pulling it into drum set playing. And that's allowing us to get more of a resonant sound from our stick and more of that woody knocking kind of sound. So you're basically holding it just like you would hold a clave, but in your right hand, and you're keeping it really loose. And you got to find your way with it. Like it doesn't quite work until you really find the technique. But I've noticed that like I can kind of do this twisting motion and I can get that knock. Kind of twisting my hand forward as opposed to standard way. You really don't hear that knock. Now the tough thing is when you start getting into playing more difficult patterns, you're gonna have to come out of that clave grip to be able to get the jazz ride pattern when you start playing faster stuff. And this gets back to Bill Stewart. What he's able to do is he's able to do slight manipulations with his hand that give you the click sound in between when he's using the bounce to get the other patterns. So when he's playing very fast patterns, he's not doing that click grip the entire time. He's really only doing it at very specific points, and it creates this overall sense of the woody articulate ride cymbal sound. But he's really using a lot of different techniques. He talks about sometimes driving his thumb into the top of the stick. You'll see him too sometimes do that. But this click grip is something you can use, but it's very limited because it does not give you the ability to really keep a loose hand and use that typical technique I was talking about in the beginning of the video. You can play fast quarter notes with it. So that is the click grip, the clave grip, and then there's ways of kind of subtly manipulating it to get closer to where you can actually use the bounce. And that's where you end up kind of going back to more of a traditional grip. You grip the stick a little bit tighter. You're using the bounce with your fingers, but you still have a cavity there to pick up on that click. So I'm actually, in that instance, I'm kind of gripping the stick a little bit more, making sure I got the cavity, and I can play faster patterns there and still get a more articulate sound on the stick definition. Versus a really loose sound. So anyway, that's the playing technique. Now we get into the sticks and the ride cymbal. This articulate woody click thing is not going to come out the same on every cymbal. I picked this cymbal because I heard the click the most with this one versus the other ones that were on the kit at the time. Basically, this cymbal has a lower profile. It has a wider separation in the sonic frequencies, so you got really low lows, and you got a stick definition that sits higher up, and so there's a lot of space there, and I find that with cymbals like that, you can hear the click a little bit more. Whereas if you have a cymbal that feels a little bit more squished and all the frequencies are all kind of living close together, it doesn't come out near as much. That's a very broad strokes look at the cymbals. I'll probably do a video where I dive deeper into that, but for now that'll do. Just the idea that you have a cymbal that's got a wide separation in the frequencies. It has a clear stick, it's got low wash, and it doesn't have a ton of mid-range that's living near where the articulation is. It's wide. That'll give you the best chance of having that click really come out on your cymbal. And lastly, we've got the stick choice. So I picked 3 sticks that to me cover kind of the gambit of the different stick tips. Obviously shaft, taper, all of that has a huge part to play, but I'm just keeping it simple. We got an acorn teardrop tip, we got a barrel tip, and then we got a round tip. So what I found is that with this barrel tip here, and it's also maple, this stick gave me the most clear woody click out of all the sticks that I tried. This is the MJC4 from Vic Firth. And we take that and we go to the hickory stick with the teardrop shape. You can still hear the click, but it's a little bit tighter. And then obviously the tip is giving a higher pitched, more articulate sound on the stick definition. But to me, in the room, the click doesn't feel as full and wide. And then we go to the extreme of this round tip that also has a very large shaft. It's like a 5B kind of shaft. This is the SD2 Bolero. The round tip does a really good job of giving you that warmth, and it kind of crosses a threshold where that click doesn't feel as pointed and doesn't feel like it would really cut in the mix. So this kind of makes the woody click sound a little bit muddy to my ear. And even like as I hear it right now, this stick would be amazing on a cymbal that was a little bit heavier and a little bit tighter, because it's opening up the spread of the cymbal, which is kind of getting in the way of that stick click. So if the cymbal itself was tighter, had less spread, you'd hear a ton of that woody click. So to me, with this cymbal, I like these two sticks the best, and of these two, I like this one the best. So you got this sound. And honestly, they're both great. They both work really well for this kind of grip. I get more of a mellow, open sound with this round tip, and I get a little bit more articulate and pointed with this barrel tip. So that is a super quick crash course in the click grip or the clave grip or whatever you want to call it. Give it a try at home, practice it. It can be great if you're playing jazz and you want to just go to quarter note patterns and you want that quarter note to really link up with the bass player, and you want to just have it be super pointed, and it can be a really fun tool to use in that kind of context. But then also start experimenting with the intricacies and the nuances between the different grips that you can do, and see, can you take your technique that you've developed and can you add in a little bit more of a click sound or a snap sound to that cymbal? And then you can start to really dive into how you draw out your sound from the cymbal. It's not just the cymbal, it's not just the sticks, it's not just the playing, it's a combination of everything. Drop a comment below, let me know what you think. Subscribe and hit the bell if you want notifications, and keep an eye out for the next video. I'm Timothy Roberts, thanks for watching.